Good evening, Savannah State University. First, I would like to thank all of the students who saw it fit to attend tonight's ice cream social and live discussion about the LGBTQIA plus community. My name, if you all do not know me just yet, my name is Miss Aisha Reeves, and I am the student activity coordinator here at Savannah State. And I and getting to know each and every one of you at some point this year. Tonight for our discussion, we have Dr. Brent Lewis. Dr. Lewis, I would first like out the opportunity to come and chat with me and to spread your expertise and experience within the LGBT community with me as well as our students here at Savannah State. So I want to give you the floor and give you the opportunity to introduce yourself.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Brent Lewis, and I currently serve as the Associate Vice President for Student Affairs at James Madison University. I've been in higher ed for the last 10 years, and a large part of my work has been working with LGBTQ students. And prior to my current role, I was at Fayetteville State University, which is an HBCU in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I spent 4 years there, and in my position there, I opened and sustained a LGBTQ resource center and also advised our student group on campus, which was called Spectrum. So I've led this work on a number of different types of campuses. I also wrote my dissertation on the lived experiences of gay and lesbian students who attend an HBCU. So I have a framework from a research perspective about lived experiences of queer students or LGBTQ students, however you identify, but I also have the experience from working one-on-one directly with students and advising the student group at my campus when I was in Fayetteville. So I've been in this work for a long time, and I've spent a lot of time mentoring and collaborating with queer student groups, queer students on campus, and being a support system for my students.
Okay. Wow. Well, thank you again for taking the opportunity to speak with us on tonight. And so I'm just going to go ahead and dive into the questions. I believe through this streaming network, the students will be able to submit questions. So not only will I have questions, I believe the students will be able to ask questions as well.
Okay.
So our first question is, how has your gender identity, sexuality, class, and background affected your experience as being a person of color?
I think that in terms of class, I grew up middle class. I had both parents in the household. I'm not a first gen college student. Both of my parents went to college. So I think that kind of set my framework for my expectations about what college looked like and what class would look like for me as an adult. I think in terms of my identities, I knew I was Black first because you see that, right? And so as you think about intersectionality and the intersections and overlapping of our identities, for me, I think it depends on the space that I'm in. If I'm in a space with mostly Black folks, I think my sexual orientation is front and center. If I'm in a space with mostly white folks, I think my Blackness is front and center. And so I went to a HBCU. I went to North Carolina A&T State University. And so being at a HBCU, I think A&T done a great job nurturing my Blackness. And me being in a Black space, because I grew up in a majority white space in terms of my schools. So A&T was my first experience with all Black people. But in processing and understanding my sexuality in that space presented challenge and difficulty. But years later, I made sense of it and I reconciled how all of my identities align and impact me on a day-to-day.
Okay. Okay. I know you mentioned something about being around people like yourself, people of color, and you feel as though your sexuality, if I'm saying, well, I'll say, I don't know if I should say gay sexuality, is more so magnified. Why do you feel like that happens amongst the African American community?
I think that when you think about intersections of our identities, one of the biggest identities that Black folks align with is religion, right?
Right.
And so most of us grew up in church of some sort. We might not all be the same denomination, but most of us grew up in church. So I think that's at the forefront of why sexuality, gender identity stands out in Black spaces, at least for me, because we have a commonality, which is our race. So in some cases, that creates safety and understanding because we're Black and we understand each other's experiences of being Black. But when it gets to the sexuality piece, unless you are an ally who is outside of the community or you're somebody that's within the community, you really don't understand the challenges that we face. And I think people have assumptions, people have myths, people have stereotypes of what they assume a gay person looks like, or a trans person looks like, or a bi person, or a person that doesn't assign to labels. And so I think for me, it's just like it's always the conversation in the room when I'm with us, when I'm with Black people.
Right. Okay, so I think one of the most popular, I'll say popular, people right now family right now in the media, of course, is Dwayne Wade, and all of the things that his daughter is experiencing, Zaya. Do you believe parents should be more accepting and supportive of their young children identifying with the LGBT community? How do you feel about that?
I think Dwayne Wade is a model parent. I think Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union are model parents, because even when Zaya was saying, before Zaya said I'm trans and I feel like I'm female, Zion said I'm gay. And so Dwayne and Gabrielle supported that. And then when the transition came to trans, they supported that. I think there's always this thought that children are too young to say how they feel, who they feel they are. I think that children and their parents have to have open dialogue. And if your child is coming to you as early as 9, 10, 11, 12 years old and saying, this is how I feel, you really should take pause and listen, because children know how they feel. I mean, I knew as early as kindergarten there was something different. I might not have known how to describe it, but I knew that there was something different. And so I think it's important that we don't get so locked into age, being children are too young to say who they are, how they feel they are, and just really listen to what they're saying, like how they say they feel and who they feel they are.
Right. I agree 100%. I have family members, and a lot of my close friends are a part of the LGBT community, and I love having open dialogue like you and I are having sometimes, just to get an understanding of how they feel, being a part of the community. One of the things, as we, I think when this became more publicized with the Wade family, and one of my friends, I think I read an article saying that Zaya, I don't want to say the wrong name, but Dwayne Wade's daughter, interested in getting, what is it?
I think it's Zaya.
Oh, we're breaking up a little bit.
Can you hear me?
Okay, Zaya. So Zaya wanted, yes. Can you hear me good? Oh, hello.
Yes. Yes.
Was interested in getting a sex change. I think everybody was on the same accord. I think she's like 12 or 13. I'm not sure. To me, you have so much life to live. I get that you feel like this is who I am and this is who I'll always be. Fine, perfectly fine. But I do think for something as major as a sex change, I think that's something that they should maybe wait to do to when she's a little. How do you feel about that with her being so young?
So I haven't heard them mention reassignment surgery yet. I haven't heard mention of that. And I think people jumped to that conclusion that reassignment surgery was something they wanted to do. Like, what's his name? Lil Boosie was at the forefront of commenting, don't cut his off, don't do this, don't do that. But Gabrielle and Dwayne weren't even talking about that. But that is the first place we go when someone says they want to be trans or they're trans, is that we assume that everybody who's trans wants reassignment surgery. That is not the case. Now, Zaya may get the surgery down the road, but I think that's a conversation that they have to have, is when, how early. There's a show that comes on TLC, and I forget the name of it.
I Am Jazz?
I Am Jazz. Yes. Mm-hmm. And Jazz just got the surgery recently.
Right.
But her show started when she was like 12.
Yes, very young. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think it's a comfortability for the child and the parents to have that conversation, but it always trips me up when people bring up surgery because I never heard them mention it. But what's between people's legs is the first thing people think about when someone says they want to be trans. And that's not always folks' agenda. Some folks identify as trans and never have reassignment surgery, never have any cosmetic surgery done, never get on hormones, never get on testosterone, because it's individualized for everybody. Everybody's experience is very different.
Yeah. So, as we all know, there has been so many things African American community when it comes to a lot of social injustice and a lot of racism. Why do you feel like there is a lack of support within the LGBT community when it comes to Black Lives Matter?
So Black Lives Matter was actually created by three queer women, three Black queer women. And so the Black Lives Matter organization is actually very inclusive of the LGBTQ community. Like if you ever go to Black Lives Matter's website and look at their vision, their mission, the tenets of Black Lives Matter, it is very aligned with queer experiences and being inclusive of queer experiences. Now, when you translate Black Lives Matter to the protest and to police brutality, that is where you see a divide between Black queer folks and Black heterosexual folk.
Right.
Because the Black queer community a lot of times feels like we don't get the same let's fist pump when it's one of us. Black trans women are killed in high numbers every year. For the last 3 or 4 years, we get 2 or 3 Black trans women killed every month. No one knows it. No one talks about it. No one says their names. No one's in the streets protesting for them because a lot of times they're killed by Black men. The other thing is, even when police brutality happens for people in the community, when George Floyd was killed and when Breonna Taylor was killed, there was also a Black trans man killed named Tony McDade. A lot of people don't even know his name because it wasn't significant to most of the Black community because he's a trans man. So that's where the divide comes in, is that Black queer folks feel like, okay, yeah, I'm Black and I support the cause when things happen in the Black community, but the Black community does not stand up for Black queer folks when we go through things.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of other human right violations do you feel like the LGBT community is exposed to?
I mean, I think we're exposed to all kinds of human rights issues. Prior to President Obama's presidency, queer folks couldn't get married. So that in itself is one of the biggest human rights issues we have faced. Most states don't have protections for people not to be fired for being gay or being trans. There's no uniformed protection across the 50 states of the United States. So that's a human rights issue. For years, gay couples couldn't adopt children. So there's a number of human rights issues. Some folks don't have access to insurance that are in the community. Some folks who are trans have challenges getting jobs or getting health insurance so that they can do, if they are looking to do some reassignment things. Some processes that are in place within our country are not inclusive for folks in the community. I could go all night on human rights issues that are just, some of this is just policy that is discriminatory. But then you think about the human rights issues within college settings. I worked at a HBCU where I had to fight tooth and nail to update policies to be more inclusive for trans students on campus. Basic needs of students, but others didn't see the need because it didn't impact them.
Right. And at the end of the day, they are students. So it should be a situation where we are able to support every need and not just single people out. Basically, because wow, I had no idea about so many issues, especially when it came to insurance. Wow, I had no idea about that. Wow.
I mean, if you even think back to the 80s, if you think back to the 80s and early 90s, HIV was known as the plague, basically. So they weren't giving gay men and drag queens, or the term back then was transsexuals, the term now transgender. They weren't giving them access to insurance because they didn't know what HIV was, and they associated all of us with having it.
Right. Yeah. And some people still do, just being ignorant, like, wow. What has it been like to be a part of today's society while being a part of the LGBT community? I think now for me, and this is of course on the outside looking in, I see a lot more young people being more comfortable. They are, but I still, because like I said, I have friends and family, I still see them battle with so many different things, especially when it comes to, it's like a switch. Like I can be who I am, around my friends, but unfortunately, it's not, I'm hiding who I am when I'm out, but I have to be more aware. So how do you feel about being a part of today's society while being a part of the LGBT community?
I think for me, my experiences are very different because I'm very open about who I am, and I live my life that way. And with me, what you see is what you get all the time. So for me, I don't feel like I don't live in the closet. I don't live in that space, but I know folks that in the community still do, especially if you're talking the Black LGBTQ community. A lot of men are living on the down low. They're not open. They're not willing to share with family that this is how they identify. Many of them don't even label it. They just do what they do. Don't tell anyone, except the people they're dealing with.
Right.
I think now it is a lot more open, because when I was in college, we didn't even have the terminology LGBTQ. That terminology didn't exist. That's relatively new. There was no education on it. No one talked about it. So I think now it is more, people are more accepting. Most college students are exposed to it a lot earlier than we were growing up. So, I've done trainings for middle schools and high schools. So they're gay students who are out at the middle school level. So the college students we have now, they're used to it. They're aware of it. The challenge becomes, how were they raised? What was the perspective that was taught to them? And are they open to changing the way they view things once they get to college? Because in college, you do start to look at things a lot differently.
Okay, so you mentioned, your trainings being as young as, elementary and middle school. So do you feel as though, and I don't want to pose this question incorrectly, but okay, I'll just go ahead and read it, and feel free to correct me if I posed this question incorrectly. Do you feel like the LGBT community is being forced upon children through television shows and different platforms of media? I know now I've seen in the media on the show, I believe it's Arthur, the show that comes on PBS. I think they said Mr. Ratburn. I saw that on social media that, he's gay, and SpongeBob, and, all of these different children's shows. So do you feel like it's forced upon, or because it's, I don't want to say a norm now, and please forgive me if I'm saying this incorrectly, but because it's more exposed, it's like, let's go ahead and put it out.
I hate the terminology of forced upon.
Okay.
Because I think, as I think about the Black side of my identities, I want children to understand about the differences in race. So the same way I want children to understand differences from the lens of race and socioeconomic status and religion and disabilities, they also need to know about sexual orientation differences. Because, when I was a K-12 teacher, I had children who had gay parents. And so they might have two dads or two moms. And a lot of times I would have that conversation with the class because no one else would, So children need to be exposed, and they need to understand it at their level, because they will have questions, especially at this day and age. Children are well aware. I have nieces and nephews who are like 10, 12, 9. They know what it is to be gay. So I think we don't give children enough credit for their level of understanding. And I don't think it's inappropriate. It would be inappropriate if the cartoon had gay sex on it, but to have a gay character is not inappropriate. It's introducing them to the fact that there are gay people in our society. There are queer people in our society, and it provides a platform where maybe their parents can answer those questions, or whoever is their guardian can answer questions in a way where children learn acceptance, they learn understanding, they learn difference, and they learn how that we grow and appreciate each other through those differences.
Right.
You teach children inclusion early on, because children are also taught to discriminate against people. So the same way that we can teach children to discriminate, we should also spend effort and energy teaching them to be inclusive. Then we don't have to do so much work with adults.
Right. I don't know if Dean Bradley is trying to get on this live. I see she's popped up, but I'll just wait for her. Okay. Well, I will proceed. I want to talk a little bit about education and some of the resources that may be available to people who just don't know, or those who make assumptions about the LGBT community. So how can I'll just say the rest of our student body and other people educate themselves on the LGBTQ community?
I think there's a number of ways that folks can do that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of shows out right now that you can watch to educate yourself. There's Pose that comes on FX, and it's currently on Netflix. I love Pose, and I love to push people to watch Pose to get a better understanding. There's a documentary called Paris is Burning.
Yes.
Yeah. There's Moonlight. There's Queer as Folk. There's The L Word. There's a number of shows that folks can watch. There's Google. You can just type in things.
Right.
There's a lot of social media activists and people who are in the community that have very vibrant platforms on Instagram, like Angelica Ross from Pose. She posts a lot. There are men who are trans loving that have platforms on Instagram. A lot of the cast from Pose post a lot on their social media pages. Amaya Scott from the show Star posts a lot. I actually brought her to my campus when I was at Fayetteville State.
Okay.
To talk to the campus about her experiences as a Black trans woman, and what her life looked like growing up. I think you have to expose students who are not from the community to the community. And not always to folks that are on the campus, because sometimes that becomes unsafe for a person who's on campus that's out and identifies with the community. They don't always want to be the educator to educate their peers. But there's a number of ways you can get educated. The Human Rights Campaign, the National Black Justice Coalition, Campus Pride Index. These are national organizations that have active websites with active information about the community. So you could just look up stuff on their websites that if you ever just want to know something.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just writing this information down.
Oh, no worries. I would say HRC is probably one of the best advocacy groups, and they always provide great information. I know I've worked with them a lot. Dean Bradley and Stowe have worked with them a lot with the conference that they do every year for HBCU students. And I plug that conference because that conference has made such a difference in the lives of my former students. So there's a lot of ways in which, folks can just educate themselves about the topic and about the community.
Right. We've created a safe space for the students, a chance for the freshman class who identify as part of the LGBTQ, to be able to come together and listen to this dialogue. Oh, is Miss Bradley trying to come on? Okay, I don't know.
Will it let her in?
I'm trying. Okay. I think she needs to cut on her camera and her
her mic.
Yes. Dean Bradley, you will she'll have to cut that on because I can't do it over here. But like I was saying, what was I saying? Yeah, but we've created a safe space, for students, to come together to listen to this dialogue, as well as, get to know one another. This whole week has been a little challenging, because we have wear masks and all of this other kind of stuff. So it's not our traditional welcome week. But what advice would you give to our students who are listening? You may have some students that didn't feel comfortable enough to even come, and sit at this social, and are kind of afraid to really be, who they truly want to be. So what advice would you give to our students who are a part of the LGBT community, as well as those, that kind of need to come out of that shell that they're in?
I would say everybody in the community is going to have a different experience, and their experience at Savannah State is going to be different based on who they are and how they identify. But I would say be confident in yourself. Learn the campus, learn the resources, find what makes you passionate about the institution, and learn yourself. Take moments to really reflect on who you are and how you identify. Find support systems on campus, whether that's other students, student activities office, the Office of Student Affairs, somebody in Res Life. Find a couple of folks that you can trust and build relationship with. Because when I went to college, I was not out. But I found spaces that were for me.
Okay.
And I found friends on campus who understood my experience. And through that, we pushed through the difficulties. We pushed through the being misunderstood. You find what works for you, whether you're out or whether you're not out yet. You create that space and make it what you want it to be.
Right.
And hold your institution accountable. If there's times where you feel like you've been disrespected, you feel like you've been discriminated against, speak out. Speak up about your experiences, because there's going to be those others that are in the community who don't feel like they have the voice to speak about their experiences, whether they're positive or negative experiences. Living your truth, whatever that truth is, find it and live in it. That is how you change the world. That's how you change your campus. There is a space for being DL and being on the down low, but eventually move past that, move through that, so that you can create that space for others. You can create that safe space on your campus where people come to Savannah State and feel like, I can be gay, I can be bi, I can be trans, I can be pansexual, I can be gender nonconforming. However you identify, create that lane, create that space for yourself and your peers.
Okay. I don't know if Miss Bradley is trying to come in, and I don't want to wrap up this discussion. And
it looks like she left. Did she leave us?
Oh, yeah. Now her icon disappeared.
Yeah, it looked like it disappeared off the screen.
Okay. There are so many other questions that I want to ask, but I also want to give you the opportunity, if you would allow us to have you back later on in the semester, if this, or whatever we have, aligns with your schedule. We would love to have you back for something similar to this. We'll definitely be getting with our Spectrum students to see exactly what it is that they want that the university can offer for them. But I want to thank you, Dr. Lewis, for taking the time out to chat with me. And I definitely hope our students enjoyed it. Do you have any final words that you would like to give to the students?
I was happy to come. I was happy to chat and engage. Hopefully, at some point, I can come to campus when we get through the pandemic, right, and really do some activities, some dialogue. I'm happy to come back in the semester again and do something virtual, maybe a Zoom where we can see the students and they can ask questions, and we can have some real dialogue. We can really get to some of the deeper parts of the discussion that we don't always get to in these conversations. Because there is a part of being queer that we have to dig deeper on. We got to talk about dating apps. We got to talk about condom use. We got to talk about all of that, dealing with down low men, dealing with women who are not out, being trans and dealing with men who are having relationships with women, and dealing with DL men on campus, and men writing you on the apps on campus. There's a part of this we got to dig deeper on for the students, because the students are living it, they're experiencing it, and we got to talk about life in the DMs, being in the queer community.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of layers we got to peel back. So I'm happy to come back.
Was very surface. This was very
surface and very PG. But there are some parts to this life and to this experience that you've got to talk about, because if you don't live it, you don't get it, and it doesn't resonate with you.
Right. Thank you so much for your transparency, and even being willing to come back to speak with our students. Like I said, I want to create more opportunities for our LGBT students to be able to come together and feel comfortable and have this healthy and necessary dialogue. So I thank you so very much for coming to speak with me. And it was very, very nice to meet you. And I look forward to you in person one day and working with you in the future.
Thank you so much for having me. Look forward to seeing you again.
Okay. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay. I hope you all have enjoyed our first of many panel discussions, our open dialogue, if you will, discussions about the LGBT community. I thank you all for coming out to the Ice Cream Social. Like I said, my name is Ms. Reeves, and I am the Student Activities Coordinator. I am located right upstairs in the Student Union in room 203. If there are any activities or anything that the university can do for you all, please feel free to email me or come by my office, and we can talk about, some things that the university can offer you. This is just the first of many events that we want to have, and we want you all to enjoy. Once again, thank you for coming, and welcome to the Tiger family. Have a good night.